Hey, I'm still Keely, and this is still the history of Ireland. Today we're going to talk about from the Norman invasion up until Henry VIII's reign in Ireland. Henry II of England got permission from Pope Adrian IV, who was the only English pope, so that he could invade Ireland and give the papacy more power over the Irish Church. Pope Alexander III ratified this so that Ireland would have to pay taxes to Rome. Diet McMurrough was exiled by the High King Rory O'Connor in 1166. This was because he had abducted another king's wife in 1152. McMurrough went to King Henry II, who is the King of England, the Duke of Normandy and Aquitaine, and the Earl of Anjou. He did this to restore his right as king in his kingdom. In 1167, the first Norman knights began to land in Ireland. However, most people showed up later with the English, Welsh, and Flemish armies. Henry II didn't want a rival state to spring up in Ireland, and so he went over in 1171 and became the first King of England to set foot on Irish soil. That November, Henry accepted the submission of all of the Irish kings in Dublin, which he named a royal city with Waterford. The kings that submitted to Henry saw him as a protector from McMurrough and the Normans, who were in Leinster. A few years later, Henry had to leave and go home to handle internal matters in England. A little bit after that, he created the Treaty of Windsor with the High King Rory O'Connor, which gave England power over Ireland. When McMurrough was dead in Leinster, the treaty was worthless because the Irish people didn't have anybody to be protected from. Several Normans sought to gain power in Ireland and start to invade neighboring territories. In 1177, the Irish territories were passed to John from Henry II. This King John is the John that is represented in many tellings of the story of Robin Hood. He became king in 1199 when Richard died during the Third Crusade. This then combined Ireland into part of the English crown. Between 1177 and 1542, Ireland was under the power of England as a feudal state. The Lord of Ireland was also the King of England. However, he was represented locally in Ireland by the Lord Lieutenant of Ireland. The Lord Lieutenant was usually a Norman prince who was pretty low down on the ladder, and so he would probably not rise to the crown. King John lost the territory of Normandy, which is in France, in 1204, to the French, surprisingly, and this gave him more time to run Ireland. Throughout the 13th century, Ireland had a warm climate which led to prosperity and the thriving of the Irish lordship. This is the time in Irish history when many walls and castles were built. During this time, the elites in Ireland spoke Norman, French, and Latin, while the poorer people spoke English, Welsh, and Flemish. Edward Bruce, a Scotsman, invaded the country several times between 1315 and 1318, which destroyed the economy. There was also a great famine at this time, which was quite problematic. Because famines are problematic. The Plague! It hit Ireland between 1348 and 1350. However, this affected the Normans who lived in towns more so than the Gaelic clans. During this time, there's a struggle between Norman and English leaders, but at the same time, the colonists were accepting Irish culture, much to the government's frustration. The colonists pushed back slowly until the English were only in Dublin and the surrounding area between 1350 to 1500. This time period is known as the Gaelic Revival. English monarchs still technically had power at this time and still claimed to be the Lords of Ireland. Next time we'll talk about a man called Silken Thomas and how Henry VIII's love life affected both his title and his rule over Ireland. Until next time, I'm still going to be Keely.